So welcome along everybody to Question Corner number 14, where we talk about and answer Camunda things. Thanks for joining, and hopefully you will be greeted by myself, a very angry finger that does not hate. I'm Niall Deehan, a developer advocate with Camunda, and I help host these question corners and should be able to help you out with various things. Joining me on 3 points for this particular event is Thomas, a consultant here at Camunda. Would you like to introduce yourself, Thomas?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to the session. So happy to be here and to participate in this question corner. So I'm Thomas, as the name says, and I'm really sorry for this participation in the European Song Contest. I'm really ashamed. It was pretty bad. But yeah, I'm a sales engineer here at Camunda, so rather in the pre-sales phase. And typically during my work, I help customer to evaluate the technical capabilities of Camunda. So yeah, maybe I can get your questions answered as well.
Super. Thank you so much, Thomas. People who arrive at the question corner frequently will notice that usually my other co-host Naila usually joins, but she can't make it today, but she will be back next month. I'll get to that at the end of the session. So very important for everybody. The way we take questions is pretty straightforward. People over the last 2 weeks have had access to this very Slido link, and they've been adding questions as we've gone along. And those questions exist somewhere. Maybe let's see if I can find them. They exist right here. They're waiting to be answered, and we've already been talking about a few of them. If you have your phone, take it out and scan this lovely QR code. That way you can vote up questions that interest you and add your own, or you can copy the link that I almost certainly should have prepared. Let me just grab that link. It's over here somewhere. This looks about right. Maybe that's it. We'll see. Actually, maybe I'll just copy this one and I'll put it into the chat so people can join in. Okay, so let me just do that right away because that's an important aspect. To those who use Slido, it's a really nice way of doing all sorts of questions, but also polls, which we'll also be doing. So so it's a good idea, even if you have no questions, we want to hear from you. So you should, there we go. Everyone should have that link now. So you should be able to jump in there and join in and let us know who you are and what you're talking about. So how does it work? Well, if you follow that link, you will have the option to click on here to add your own questions. And of course, if you see a question that you really need to know the answer to, like a few months ago, Bjorn asked about my strawberries, which you're doing very well, you can upvote them. So easy enough. That's a very simple system. I should specify that questions from people who are currently watching this right now get a certain precedence. If I will tend to want to look at questions from people who have shown up live, because you guys deserve a little bit of extra attention, considering you took time out of your day to join us. So if you do have questions that you've asked earlier, let us know. And if there is, and if you added questions and put your name on it, feel free to let me know as well. Okay, so let's first of all do a poll. If you log into Slido, you should see this. I'm going to launch a poll quickly just to find out a little something that may help us answer some questions. And that question is, what distro of Camunda do you currently use? We have a lot of different distros and different ways of using Camunda. So we have Spring Boot, which is actually my personal favorite. We have Camunda Platform Run. We have Cloud. We also have the old staples, the ones that used to be our primary focus, which is Tomcat and Wildfly. Thomas, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, definitely. So I typically use Camunda Spring Boot because it's the most convenient way to easily boot it up and having all the possibility to configure it how you actually like. But yeah, sometimes the platform run is pretty useful as well, especially for developers in other languages such as .NET. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you like Java, use Java, Spring Boot is where it's at. And it looks like Spring Boot is it's absolutely one of the most popular, according to our telemetry, it is the most popular way to use Camunda, followed swiftly by Camunda Run. And weirdly enough, the third most popular, did you know this, Thomas? The third most popular, according to our telemetry, is Micronaut, which is a community extension. Yeah. So that is a really popular community extension. this is since October, I think. So yeah, it looks like we got a lot of Java folk in the room, which is very, very nice. So that's good to know. So we have, this will come in handy when discussing some other questions. And someone is here to listen. That is good news because we are here to talk. So let's get started and answer, oops, well, that happened, there we go. Let's answer some questions. So I am going to kick things off. I'm going to pick a question that is, let's say, I'll go with an upvoted one. Let's say, Dennis, what's the best way to verify deployment after update? I would like to know in advance if my process is going to fail. Fantastic question. I'm going to take this one because it's quite a nice one. So first of all, I love these questions that have like loads of possible answers, and this certainly has it. So the word deployed there is actually the key word, because depending on how your deployment works in Spring Boot or in Camunda Run, you actually have really different options. So let's talk about the easy option first. If you're deploying a process to something like Camunda Run, you're deploying just a single artifact via the REST API. And when you do that, and you can do this via the modeler, you'll often find that there's actually a check that gets made by the modeler itself, or sorry, by the engine itself, that actually won't allow you to do the deployment if, for instance, you're missing gateways that aren't properly implemented, or you've forgotten to add a Java class. So those kind of very easy sort of changes are caught quite quickly. Now, people often ask me about how do we do validation for things that are business specific? Like, let's say, for instance, they have a specific rule that they're not allowed to use a certain symbol. Well, what you can do is when you deploy something, it runs through a Beekman parser. And this is an extension point. So what you can do is you can actually add to that parser to check for specific things that are violated. So that's a first step. That is to make sure that your process model, independent of everything else, is going to pass. That's pretty good. Now, API breaking changes. Camunda itself essentially doesn't really, I think we have not yet needed to remove any API. We have deprecated a bunch of stuff, but generally speaking, that's not going to be a problem. All public API is usually left open, but it's actually more sort of important when you're thinking of integration tests. If you're deploying a process that needs to connect with lots of different systems, there's loads of possible API changes that may exist in your own infrastructure. So after testing that the model works, right, that everything goes through the model correctly and that's working, then of course you should be doing integration tests where you test whether the individual services can actually connect to the engine itself. And that can be done independently before the process is actually deployed. And you can do that for both the types of deployment. And we do have a whole bunch of testing frameworks that are out there that are worth looking at. Because it's a broad topic, I may have even missed exactly what Dennis is looking for. But Thomas, do you have any particular suggestions?
Yeah. Maybe something to add there is the BPM assert library. So testing or writing unit tests for processes might be pretty good, especially when updating or changing the environment around the process itself. And then you can basically write a unit test to check whether the process still behaves similarly to what you have expected in the previous versions. And then updating is very simple. You can have a CI/CD pipeline, updating the version, run through the unit tests, and then you can be sure that at least the processes behave as they should behave.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll try and throw a link for the asserts library there as well. Cool, I will take that as answered. Okay, Thomas, I think that strikes your fancy.
Yeah, I think the first one is very complex and very interesting.
Big
and
question.
It was upvoted a lot of times, and I see Marianne is also in this call. So why not answering it? I guess it will be fun. So I've seen it previously already, and I've prepared a bit of a slide deck. So maybe let me show you something. So in general, there are a lot of dimension on how you can use Camunda for microservice orchestration, or for the handling of those. And of course, the architectures differ by a lot. So what we see here in the first picture is, for instance, an example where Camunda, or in generally a workflow engine, is used in order to track what's going on in your microservice architecture. And then we do use Optimize in order to visualize everything, for instance, in an end-to-end heat map. So as it's summarized right here, it's totally non-invasive, but also has limited power. So no actual orchestration is done here. And that's where your central approach is kicking in. So maybe let me quickly go here. Yeah. So this is now the example of such kind of workflow engine. Now we can, of course, think of such event bus, but it can also relate somehow differently. And I guess these diagrams or these kind of wild arrows show the downside of this approach, because you then have one deployment or one process deployed to the workflow engine, but it's owned actually somewhere else. And this is, for me especially, the main downside of such kind of an architecture. And therefore, I would always recommend using such kind of decentralized approach where you have these workflow engines attached to an actual service. And this would then result into something like this, a very big architecture. For instance, you do have an order workflow, you do have an order application, which is then split up to payment, checkout, shipment, so on and so forth. And each of those contains a standalone workflow engine, a single workflow engine. And you can create an end-to-end visibility by using Optimize from above in order to really monitor everything. So I've pointed it out on the top right corner. So this rather follows the self-contained systems approach, where I'm a very big fan of. So yeah, this would be actually my consideration when creating such kind of architecture for microservice orchestration. So maybe what do you think about this, Niall?
Well, I'm actually going to throw a lot of cold water over your assertion that this is the best option. Not because it's not a good option. I mean, we all saw that a lot of people like Spring Boot. Therefore, the embedded engine is quite common in that case as well. But I will throw some problems with this architecture at you and how to fix them. The first problem is, if you hate your DevOps department, what you want to do is give them a bunch of the same artifact with lots of different versions. So in this scenario, you could end up with lots of different versions of the engine. And if that is true, you also then have different versions of schemas in each database. And then you could have a really big problem when it comes to actually updating. For instance, if you have one very cutting edge team in this distributed system that wants to use the latest Camunda features, they are then using let's say right now, Camunda 7.16 Alpha 1 is the most recent release. And maybe they have that in there. Meanwhile, you have the lazy team who are stuck on Camunda 7.11, which is out of support and no longer no longer functioning correctly. Well, that's actually a big problem when it comes to trying to wrangle this as a DevOps person. You then have to keep an eye on which ones have which version, and you need to try and tell all these different people at best to try and update their version of Camunda, or at least try and use the same. And this can actually be a problem in the long run, especially because certain versions of Camunda support certain databases and certain application servers. So if you can expand that out, it would then mean that maybe you have different versions of SQL, different versions of Docker or whatever, and this could be a bit of a nightmare to maintain, although it is very easy to get started with. So from my mind, I would actually suggest the one you threw before, which is the which is this the one? Yeah, the central engine. Now, this also has some downsides, but is actually super cool because in one place, you have a single version of the engine, you have a single instance of the schema, and everything else can change independently in the same way as Thomas's example showed. You can have all the teams working independently, but they no longer need to care too much about the version of Camunda they're talking to. So for that reason, I prefer this particular architecture. So not to pick a fight with you, Thomas, but
oh yeah, we are going to have, because yeah, I think dependency management is going to be especially tricky in this little example about a central workflow engine. So you maybe have different product or different development teams for all of the other microservices, and then they need to somehow manage their dependency for this workflow engine we've got here. And of course, you need more alignment. When you follow the self-contained systems approach, you can expect to have one dedicated development team containing a DevOps expert in each of those systems right here. So instead of having one global dependency, you can act individually. So maybe this is another consideration to throw into the round, but I guess it's rather a methodology than a thing which can actually be solved.
I'm going to have to throw a poll up at the end to get people to actually validate which one they think is a better one to use. So prepare for that. But thanks for your answer. That was a very, very succinct answer to the question. So that was really good. I hope Mariana got the question she was looking for, got the answer she was looking for. I'll go back to sharing the questions then. Well, there's a process. Great. So I found one I want to talk about, which is, it just came in. Actually, it was Doug's one. I'll maybe leave Doug's one to a little later because that's, I don't know where that one is, but it's somewhere. Let's go with this one because this one's great. This one is, let's take that, okay. How can I get rid of optimistic locking exceptions? They occur randomly, or is it resolved above 712? First of all, there's actually two answers to this. The first is yes, it is resolved to a great degree around 712. In fact, we even wrote a blog post about the differences between, I think it was in 714 or 713, where we spent a lot of time trying to remove the number of optimistic locking exceptions. So it actually does improve. But the reason I said there is two answers to this question is because you use the term get rid of, and that's just not going to happen. Optimistic locking exceptions are almost always going to happen in certain architectures. But I will tell you why. Okay, the first thing is, two things about optimistic locking exceptions are, first, don't worry too much about them. Optimistic locking exceptions, when they do happen, usually they have infinite retries. So they do throw a bunch of stuff into the log, but it just says that what's really happening here is a job or some sort of job is trying to be locked, and basically it's already locked by some other thread or some other node. That's the underlying problem. That isn't the end of the world. It means you failed to lock something you expected to be unlocked, but it then just goes back and waits for a certain amount of time and then tries to lock another job. So usually it basically works itself out. Now, that doesn't mean that seeing lots of them isn't a problem. It definitely is. But these can actually be fixed in loads of different ways. And generally speaking, all you can really do is design things in a way in which it becomes less likely. Now, optimistic locking exceptions also have the benefit that if they didn't exist, it would be impossible to guarantee state consistency in the engine. The engine is based on the idea of optimistic locking at a fundamental level. And as a way of protecting process instances from having multiple threads messing with the state at the same time, optimistic locking kind of has to exist for that reason. So yeah, so the answer, I guess, was that yes, above 12 is much better, not gone away yet. But Thomas, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think not much. The only thing you can really try to avoid these is by setting the right transaction boundary and to do a bit of playing around with the job executor settings. So for instance, you can set the back off for the thread if such kind of exception occurs. So you ever got a bit of flexibility there to tune your system in such a way that you can really avoid running into such kind of exceptions. And I guess, that's the key there.
Cool, thanks, Thomas. Is there any question that you would like to gravitate towards?
Yeah, I would take the one with the deployments, to delete all of them. I guess we had a very interesting discussion about this already. And I just want to pick it up once again, because you, for instance, earlier said already that, hey, there are some nice custom plugins which do some nice batch operation. You can configure batch operations in such a way that they are also deleting deployments. But I think we should really try to understand why one wants to do such kind of thing. So you can really do a lot of bad things when you delete deployments, especially when you still have running processes instance on there. So deleting something cascading could result into a big problem. So maybe just go into the cockpit and check if there's, first of all, any kind of still running process instance, then migrate it to the newer version before then deleting actually a deployment. So doing it in an automated way might be a bit of risky. So rather than do it manually directly from within the cockpit. So this would be my advice here. So there's extended batch functionality, which would be possible by a community plugin, but it comes with a high risk.
I guess the high risk kind of depends on the fact that someone has to write custom code for it, right? So you're right. It is if you're interested in the custom batch thing that Thomas was talking about, go to the Camunda Community Hub. I'll put a link to it at the end. But that's got the Camunda custom batch plugin, and that will allow you to use Camunda's own internal batch mechanism to do something customized for yourself. And as Thomas said, yeah, you can definitely do this. The API is available, the plugin is available, but it's a dangerous game to play when you're deleting all deployments on a production system. So tread carefully.
Yep, I think somebody raised their hand. I'm not sure if we can enable them to speak up.
We'll take them, I think, at the end, maybe.
Okay.
Or if someone wants to add additional stuff, please pop them in the question here, because it's easier for us to sort of continue on with this one page. So if you want to add your thing right here, if you have any particular comments or follow-up questions on anything at all, please drop them on the here. We're finally getting to Doug's question, the well-awaited one. This is a forum post that I saw a while ago. Basically, it's about how to get engine plugins in Camunda's Run distro. And again, this is one of the questions that myself and Thomas glanced at just this morning about ones we were interested in answering, mainly because neither of us have actually tried this. So we don't have a fundamental answer to this. And that's really fun, because it means that gives me something to do. So let me first of all explain why Doug has asked this question for those who don't understand the plugin mechanism. In most cases, Camunda is built for plugins to be loaded into the engine. There's plugin points around the place that allow you to overload the existing classes with classes that can do some sort of custom mechanisms, like, for instance, being able to reroute the history data to a different location, that sort of thing. Now, that's quite easy with Spring Boot because you're in a Java world. You just need to update just need to overload the class within your application. It's also quite easy in Tomcat because you just then need to edit an XML file, drop the jar into the library in Tomcat, and then you can overload it. Camunda Run distro is it's much harder because it's designed to be wrapped up and the Java quite well hidden from the end users, which makes it quite hard you can't just get access to that. It looks like the only way to do this would be to rebuild the Camunda engine to register the plugin. And then there is a lib folder in the Camunda Run distro where you can put your custom libraries and call them that way. But actually to overload an existing or to overwrite an existing internal engine component would probably require you needing to go in and mess around a little bit with the distro itself, which is not nice. The reason that I think that this is an important question is because we need to fix that, I think, and I'm going to try and look into seeing if I can write a decent example of how to really do this, but also then see if we can make it easier in future distributions, because I do think it's important. We have a lot of process engine plugins out there that people really like using, and I wouldn't want it to stop people from doing it. So I'll probably try and create a feature request for this. And I'll publish it at the end so you can follow the progress. But right now, the way to do it is really nasty. Thomas, unless you have any better way to do it?
Definitively not. Nothing to add there. As you mentioned, haven't done this yet.
Thanks. Okay, so let us tick that. Is there any other questions that you want to grab there, Thomas?
I think I'm going to take the one regarding Optimize. It's a bit further down. This one showed up a bit earlier today, and I've prepared a bit to show, actually. So maybe just a very nice feature of Optimize, which can be showed in such kind of requests. So let me just share my screen, the whole one. And you should be able to see actually an empty Optimize. And now maybe let's talk about how can external resources show up in our reports within this Optimize tool. So maybe to elaborate a bit on what is actually Camunda Optimize. So this tool provides functionality for dashboarding and reporting. So basically you can analyze what has been going on the engines and then see, for instance, if there are any inefficiencies, any bottlenecks, so on and so forth. So yeah, right here, we do have this example collection, which is pretty empty. And now we want to basically catch some events from external systems which have been thrown. So therefore, maybe let's try out this event-based processes feature. So to talk through about this in the theory, I love to use this little blog post here, which elaborates on how you can really achieve this kind of end-to-end process visibility, which is the actual feature behind it. And therefore, we have published some kind of ingestion API within Camunda Optimize, and other systems can actually throw events, and they've been captured within this ingestion API, and then can be mapped to some very nice process. So it's not actually process mining, but rather you have an event from external source and can map it to your end-to-end process. So yeah, that's the feature. And now I also have a little example to show you, because I've prepared a little call in Postman. So basically we are going to send something to our Optimize showroom. I've prepared a little JSON file. So basically we do have an order created event, an order validated event, and then we've just notified that the package is actually shipped. Now I can send it out, or I have already sent it out a while ago to test if it's really working. And now we can switch to our Camunda Optimize tool in order to create a new process. And now let's just simply auto-generate it by an external event source. I can listen for those external events, add it, and then I can just generate it. And now we do see actually what's embedded in my requests here in Postman. So that's pretty neat to see. Then we can, of course, publish it. And this will take some time, but of course, later on, we can then build some nice reports by using this little created event. So I just need to select it here, add it to my collection in order to create some analysis based on, let's do a dashboard based on such a thing. So can choose this and then just create the dashboard. It's not very meaningful, but at least I have some possibility to see it. So of course, if you have a rather complex showcase, you can really visualize the end-to-end process, even those things which are not embedded in Camunda. And that's, I think, a pretty neat feature. And it's very easy to use just by this little event ingestion. And it's a standard, so it's nothing proprietary which is used there.
That's very cool. I actually haven't seen that been run before. I've seen like some of the demos, but I haven't seen the actual thing in action. That's pretty cool. Thanks for that, Thomas. So let's see if we can run through some quick ones. Let's take this one. This is a great one because I had to go, and I'm not neither myself nor Thomas are actually the kind of people privy to things like sales matters. So this question caught me off guard. It says, why does a single process instance on Camunda Cloud cost so much? $10. That is a lot, isn't it? So I went and checked because this was an interesting question. Which I treated, yeah. And so I found out that actually it depends on the kind of process you are running. So we have essentially what is like a tiered system depending on your throughput. If you have a really low throughput, I think the most you will pay, I think, is $10 per process, root process instance, not just, so sub processes don't count and that sort of thing. But actually, if the higher your throughput, the less you pay per process instance. So I don't exactly know if this is going to stay this way forever. Camunda Cloud only launched a couple of weeks ago, and I think this is the first sort of thing. And I don't know enough about this to give you too many details beyond the fact that if you have a huge throughput, you'll only be paying 0.00 something of $1 per process instance under certain situations. But if you do want more information, I would suggest contacting the people who know about sales things on the camunda.com website. They will probably be able to give you an answer you can believe, unless, Thomas, you happen to have any knowledge in this regard.
Nothing at all in the Camunda Cloud. I assume that the more you consume and in regards to process instances, the less you pay, but it's just a consideration or an idea how this could work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think initially they were trying to have a pricing that reflects both very large, complex models, but also very small, very high throughput process models, and sort of both are sort of catered for. So that's the way that works, I think. I would like a big asterisk on exactly everything I said right now. I was just talking about stuff that I know to be true, and actually I don't know too much about the pricing model, so I'm sorry if I've said something incorrect. So you should probably ask the sales team, I guess. Okay, cool. Let's grab another one from people who are here. Tim asked a question that I don't know if I can answer, but I'm going to try. Hey, are legacy plugins, custom scripts defined in require.js config in the config.js going to be long-term supported? So Thomas, first of all, before I answer this question, do you have any fun front-end knowledge that involves our exciting front-end applications like Cockpit and Task List?
I have seen a very nice talk about this in the last community summit by our developers, but I'm actually not sure if they are long-term supported. I cannot think about this because we cannot give any kind of support for those internal APIs which are used there. So that's what I would expect in this question. Yeah, but there is a new actual front-end system, and maybe you have something to share about it, because I'm not sure if this is actually using this config.js and this require.js config. So maybe you have something more to share about it, because it's rather a developer advocate topic, I would say.
Thanks for throwing that in my direction, Thomas. Appreciate it. So I can tell you from what I know is that we actually have been trying very hard to make sure whenever we make changes to the front-end applications that things are backward compatible. So I can tell you that we will always try to make sure things are supported that are created. I'll give you an example. For instance, recently we changed Cockpit in a big way that allows you to use React and to avoid some of the Angular stuff when you're using plugins. That said, you can still use the old Angular plugins. If we wanted to, we could have just decided to scrap everything and just start from scratch. But we did want to maintain a certain amount of backward compatibility for the people who have built some of the cooler plugins. So we'll generally try our best to either support things long term or offer a pretty good path to migrate to the new iteration. The thing is, long-term support is very hard to say. While Camunda has long-term goals up to 5 years in terms of individual features, we only really look about 6 months ahead with any sort of surefire guarantees. And even those aren't entirely guarantees. So I can't say for sure. I'm sorry to say that is a we'll almost certainly not want to do it to leave anyone in the lurch. Okay, Thomas, do you want to grab maybe one more or two more?
Yes, the first one actually from Marianne.
Okay.
So about authorization and authentication, I guess we do have a very good best practice page about this. So maybe let me quickly share it in order to highlight what's possible and how it actually looks like.
Okay, there you go.
So I just need to go here. Yeah. So now you should be once again able to see my screen about securing Camunda, and I just can recommend taking a really detailed look on this best practice page, and it will give you some very good fundamentals on how to configure Camunda, especially in order to set up authentication and authorizations. So understanding these is kind of essential. So of course you can always integrate another system to handle the authentication. For instance, you rely on some kind of identity access management system in your company using LDAP that's actually built in out of the box. And in case you want to use, for instance, single sign-on OAuth or other protocols for authenticating users, you can just simply scroll down here and see how you can actually support this. And this is easily possible by just writing some very basic new authentication filters, and then you can connect to or integrate to any of these SSO providers as well. So that's, I think, a very neat feature of especially the Spring Boot edition from Camunda to integrate in such kind of other identity providers. And in terms of authorization, you do have a role-based access control within Camunda. I guess this little screenshot here describes it pretty well. So you can have multiple groups from the identity access management system and allow what is actually permitted and what not. So therefore, you can then use our admin tool in order to create those authorizations there. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to share already. I guess it's worth sharing this little link here so you can take a look on this in more detail.
Marvelous, thanks so much. Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, I think you've nailed it. That link is a great one. The best practice link is super cool. That's a good option to add. It's a really, really important one. So let's go here. We have an important thing to do, Thomas. We need to find out who is wrong and who is Niall, because we are going to ask the question of which is the better architecture. So is it the centralized, which of course Niall suggests? Is it the embedded that Thomas suggests? Or are they both great and we should stop fighting? This will be a nice way to sign things off. Maybe people want us to continue fighting. I don't really mind. It kind of depends on how people use it, I guess. Okay, people, please vote. It's driving me crazy. I need a win here.
Can we both vote as well, or should we vote at all?
Good point. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, I should vote, shouldn't I? Let me.
You definitely should, because I will do so.
If it's just the two of us voting, I feel it's not fair. But
maybe not. But yeah.
Oh, okay. We have two votes. I haven't actually voted yet, so that's that's even worse.
Uh-oh, you're pulling ahead. Oh no.
Oh. I'm feeling pretty confident now. 60%. Oh, Thomas, I'm not. You're only breaking.
I feel like Germany during the ESC. So
it's flashbacks of I don't hate. Yeah. Okay, Thomas, we can come back. I think now that I'm winning, I shall stop the poll, because I don't want to encourage anybody to think they can change things. So let's just kill that. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, which means we could do one quick question if there's one hanging around. And is there a good one? Oh, we already answered some optimistic locking ones. I hope that was useful. Specifically, no parallel branches. That is all about where, as Thomas said, where you put asynchronous before tick boxes. So just take a look at that. You've answered this one. I think we are more or less good, because there's no very quick answers here, I don't think, unless you want to grab one yourself, Thomas.
Yeah, good question. I think we have talked about this one as well in regards to Optimize. So this can be checked. Yeah, maybe I would have a few insights to share about the RPA integration.
Yeah, let's do it.
General. So maybe
1 minute.
1 minute. Oh gosh, that's a bit tricky. So I need to share my screen once again to just show the architecture on how the system is then stuck together in order to communicate with such an RPA.
Let's do it. Let's see it.
Yeah. So great. Let's go here. It's PowerPoint 1 again, and Jan should be able to see the very nice title point-and-click orchestration for automation anywhere. But so it's not that easy, but you typically start off the journey with the Cavimo. There you can create catalog templates, which are pretty useful. So you cannot use them only for RPA topics, but also create yourself some service catalogs for basically all your implementation. So this is kind of an element template, which is included there, or which is built in here. And then you can simply load it into your modular application, deploy everything, and then there's this little RPA bridge. So this is an additional component which works as an external task client, or external task worker. So it simply connects to Camunda's API, retrieves task, and then triggers basically one of those RPA vendors. And I guess the nice thing here is that you don't have any kind of vendor login. You can just orchestrate multiple. And you do not need to rely on this single RPA bridge. You can also build your own in order to connect to whatever RPA vendor. I guess it's pretty straightforward.
That's
Okay,
awesome.
so this was the very short explanation.
I want to really quickly add to that one additional thing, which is Robot Framework, which is an open source RPA tool, which doesn't require the bridge. It's written in Python, so if Python's your thing, it's a really cool open source platform. It's probably the most open RPA tooling I've ever found. I've tried to use a whole bunch of them and found them to be quite irritating sometimes when you're trying to use them, especially Automation Anywhere. I had nightmares with that. But I don't care which one you use. You can use any one you like. I don't have a skin in the game. I just tried to see if I could get them working. And Robot Framework have not paid me for this endorsement. I just really liked using that software. And there's a community extension, I think, to use that as well. So you can feel free to mess around with that.
Does it run on Windows only as well? Because all the other applications do run only on Windows, which is a bit of a bummer since I'm not a Windows user. So have you something to share?
I do. Robot Framework works on anywhere you like. It does not require Windows. Look at that. Imagine. Yeah, I had the same problem of trying to get UiPath working. You must use Windows, same as Automation Anywhere. But I'm not sure about the feature set as you make a much bigger, more complicated system. But I know from a getting started experience, it's super cool to use Robot Framework and very quickly as well with Camunda as well. It's very cool. Okay, so we have now reached the end of our question taking. But there's more stuff. Don't worry, because now I get to tell you all about some things that might interest you that's coming up soon. We have a whole bunch of events on the way. We do have an events page, camunda.com/events, but the ones that are coming up that might be of consequence, we were just talking about RPA. So there's a process automation forum on June 8th for RPA. Thomas, are you going to be at that by any chance?
Yes, I'm there actually. So I will do a live demo about your iPad orchestration by using Camunda. So this was actually a perfect transition without having it planned. So
yeah, exactly. Who would have thought? Yeah, so pop along there if you're interested in RPA and want to see how it works. There's also a banking and finance one on July 8th. Webinars coming up. We have consistency when using microservices on July 20th for a webinar. And this is really fun. We have 3 meetups in 3 different languages this month. We have the German meetup group. We have the very first Spanish-speaking meetup group, which is in Peru. And we also have in English from South Florida, all coming up next month. If those are meetup groups are organized by individual community members, not by Camunda themselves. So if you're interested in a very community-orientated event where people just interested in Camunda are finding out stuff, then you should do that. The very next question corner is, of course, the last Thursday of every month, the 24th of next month. Next month, our special guest will be Philip Froma, or Flip, as he is known here in Camunda, and he's going to be talking about Camunda's modeler. He's been a part of BPMN.js for the last 5 years here in Camunda. He's a very big part of the modeling team and the underlying libraries that build it, so that if you have questions around the modeler, he's a great person to answer them. And of course, Naila will also return next month as well. If you want some more information about stuff that's going on, we mentioned a whole bunch of plugins and new features and new events. If you want to know about that sort of things, the developer newsletter is available. You can go to camunda.com, developer community updates, and you can subscribe. It's a newsletter specifically developed by the DevRel team for developers. So it won't have too much that will bug you, I hope, from if you're not interested in marketing stuff. I think that is it. We will say thank you very, very much. Have we landed on time? We have, as always. Thank you very, very much to Thomas for joining me in the last minute for this question corner. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me here, and thanks for those good questions. Happy to answer them, hopefully as good as I could.
No, it was fantastic. It was great to have you here. Also, thanks behind the scenes to Philly for setting everything up. And Luca is also somewhere, presumably, involved in these sort of things as well. So thanks everyone who did. If you didn't get your questions answered, have no fear. Go to the forum and ask there, and hopefully you'll be able to get some results. And if not, we will hope to see you again at another event. So see you next time, and goodbye from both of us. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye.